Efficiently rolling and running high quantity maps that are tuned specifically for your build is the best way to ensure that you get the most value out of your time while playing Path of Exile. For most players, 95% of the time playing the game, as long as they're not just sitting in their hideout, is probably spent running maps, and that time is primarily focused on trying to upgrade their character, get currency, and progress in the game. In this video, I will show you some tricks, tips, and just baseline foundational systems that you can implement for rolling your own maps, being able to understand what you're going to be looking for, answer common beginner questions like what map mods should I avoid for this build, and to make preparation and running your maps as seamless as possible, really lubricate those gears and make sure that you spend as much time in the map as possible instead of sitting in your hideout fiddling around with things. So starting off, what is rolling your map? What are we talking about when we're talking about rolling your map? So maps in this game are regular items that you can craft much like anything else in the game. Similar to weapons and armor, they have a quality factor that you can improve using cartographer's chisels. Going up to 20%, they can also drop at higher than 20%, but this is very uncommon. A white map will go up by 5%, a blue map will go up by 2%, and a yellow map or unique map will go up by 1% per chisel. So you usually want to ensure that the item is of normal or white quality before you use those chisels to conserve them. The quality will directly improve the quantity of items that drop from monsters in the game. So 20% quality directly correlates to 20% increased items dropping from monsters in the game. Since kind of the purpose of playing Path of Exile is more loot dropping from those monsters, you basically always want to be ensuring that you're using chisels when you can. Besides that, they are 100% regular craftable items. So we can use transmutes, we can use augmentation orbs, we can use alterations, we can use regals, we can scour, and we can use alchemies. In fact, if we want to, I will make the sacrifice just for the video. Luckily, exalts are not worth very much right now, but if there are fewer than 6 modifiers, just like a regular rare item, we can even use an exalted orb to get that final 6 modifier to really improve the quantity on the map. As you'll see, the quantity, rarity, pack size will all improve based on the modifiers of the map. And you'll see that the modifiers that we roll on the map right here, they are almost all negative for the character. So in general, they will always make the map harder for you. Some of them you can ignore. Some of them are generally beneficial. Like map contains sea witches that might make the map actually easier because it limits the monsters to easier ones to fight. But generally the intention is it makes the map harder to run. So this is a risk and reward system where the risk is what you see as the explicit modifiers. Cursed with Enfeeble, boss has more life, boss has increased AoE. However, we get increased pack size, which makes the size of monster packs larger, more monsters to kill. Item rarity will go up as well, so items that drop will have a chance to be a higher rarity tier. So we can see that the 2 modifiers that I have on this are worth that amount of quantity, rarity, and pack size. And this varies entirely based on the modifier. So you can see that players have 25% less accuracy rating is worth 13% quantity, 8% rarity, and 5% pack size. Some are worth more and some are worth less. Now, the other thing when it comes to rolling maps is some of these map mods are very scary or dangerous for your character. And this is where a little bit of subtlety and the systems that we get into a little bit later really come into play. As you're rolling your maps, you really want to look out for these certain modifiers. Monsters reflect elemental damage, for example. My character is not reflect immune. I will immediately die if I attack any monster with this reflection on it, so I have to make sure I do not run a map with this modifier. Now, there are lots of ways to get around certain of the downsides. You can run a Sextant that makes you reflect immune. I am not going to go into that detail. Focus here is really just how and why you roll the maps. Then you can modify the map that you're running with additional fragments. As you can see, I have 5 slots in my map device. This is done by putting in at least 4 of these emblems, running the encounter. You don't really have to do anything. You can kind of just run around. I think you can even lay there and die. And then that will unlock the 5th slot in your map device. Strongly, strongly recommend that. Gives you 1 more fragment to improve the quality of your map that you run. I'm not going to go into detail about everything here, but Scarabs will guarantee some content in the map. It'll improve the drops, more div cards, more maps, guaranteed abyss, guaranteed legion, stuff like that. You can also use sacrifice fragments. They have a hidden mechanic, which actually gives you 5% quantity per sacrifice fragment that you run. And you can even use the Ubered 01s for 10% quantity per. So strongly recommend using your regular sacrifice fragments if you have them. If you have nothing else to put in when you're running your maps, toss those in. It's like a free chisel, basically. In addition to that, we have Sextants right here. Sextants will usually give you more monsters in the map, more quantity, stuff like that. Not going to go over all the Sextants in Sextant theory right now. And Sextants are tradable and sellable by using the Surveyor's Compass, and you can click right on the Void Stone. This will give you a charge compass that then you can use on a Void Stone and reapply it. So this allows you to trade them. If you want to pre-buy specific Sextants for your strategy, you can do that. Surveyor's Compasses are 1 chaos per from Kirak. Once you understand what it is and why you would do it, Then you start planning. First thing that you should do is pick a strategy. A good strategy will tell you the Atlas passives that you want to go for, Sextants, Scarabs, Fragments, and specifically the type of map that you're going to want to run. Some strategies are just better for specific maps. And in fact, by sustaining or even over sustaining specific maps, you can sell those off for additional profit as well. Once you've picked a strategy, you're going to need the maps, Scarabs, Sextants, and Fragments to do it. I'm not going to teach you how to bulk buy in this video, but you can look into the Forbidden Trove or PoE stack for bulk buying. Or if you're an SSF or just stubborn like I am, you can farm them up yourself. For getting a ton of maps to drop, I strongly recommend looking into wandering path-based strategies, and you can very easily fill up an entire map tab in just about an hour or so with something like that set up. I do want to call special attention to the Humble Horizon Orb. I think this is an orb that is very much slept on. No one really cares about it. You can buy 700 for a single divine. The way that it works is it re-rolls a map as another map of the same tier. However, it is restricted by the natural map drops on an Atlas. What I mean by that is if you remove all of your Void Stones, if I zoom in right here so you can see, if you remove all of your Void Stones, you will see the natural tiers that maps will drop at. These are the maps that you can hit with the Horizon Orb. So if you want to know what the tier 16 maps are, you can just type in the number 16, and any tier 16 map that you use a Horizon Orb on, even if you have one that is altered by a Void Stone, it will re-roll into only these 4 maps. So even if I have a T16 strand or anything like that, it will then only go between these 4 maps when I use a Horizon Orb. Now, this league specifically 3.21 when I'm recording doesn't really have particularly good or strong T16 maps, but the best one is generally regarded as Coves right here. So if you get a lot of really crappy maps that you're just not gonna run, but if you wanna blast maps really quickly, just get your invitations or anything like that, you can just use those Horizon Orbs on the bad maps, turn them into Coves. Once a map is one of these tier 16 maps, it is a 33% chance to turn into the one that you're going for. So it's really easy to quickly turn a bunch of crappy maps into the one that you're caring about. All right, this site is poe.re. We'll go into more detail about it a little bit later, but it is also a great list of all of the map modifiers. So I get this question all the time, is what map mods can I not run with this build? Now, I can't fully answer that in this video without it going very, very long, but I do want to call special attention to kind of the scariest ones. And it does feel like they kind of highlighted this already in this website. So there's a pretty simple flowchart for deciding which map mods are good for you. Do you do elemental or physical damage directly? Will those kill you? If the answer is yes, then you don't want to run maps with those mods. Now, there are lots of ways to prevent reflected damage. There's woke gems, there's sextants, there's rings, there's pantheons, stuff like that. Any build can become reflect immune with a couple modifications if it needs to, if you have a map that you have to run. However, you do generally want to avoid these if you are not reflect immune. Next up is cannot regen, life mana, or energy shield. Pretty self-explanatory. If you don't have good sources of leech, although going right hand in hand with this is cannot leech from monsters. If you don't have a good source of leech or way to recover these, this can be a pain in the butt. Special mention here, though, is Eldritch Battery. Makes your mana get protected by Energy Shield. That alone can usually allow you to run cannot regen maps because you no longer care about mana regen. You can also use Enduring Mana Flask, so that effect will not go away when your mana hits full, so you can just hit those occasionally if you really need to. But I find these maps, even if my character can do it, very annoying, so I usually avoid that. Cannot leech from monsters. This is almost always for attack builds. They rely on leech for their life and or mana sustain. Bow builds specifically rely on leech a lot for a lot of their sustain. Unless I get my mana cost to very close to 0, I usually try to avoid these. Cursed with Temp Chains, I find this makes the game less fun. If you have reduced effective curses or curse immunity, you can obviously ignore these ones. Player has minus max res. This makes you significantly squishier. So to explain this with an example, if you have 75 max res and there's 1,000 damage hit coming in, that means you only take 250 damage, leaving you with 750 life afterwards. If you have 62 max res, you then take 380 damage, leaving you with 620 life left over. 130 more damage taken means that you take 52% more damage than you normally would. And this is why players have minus max res is one of the scariest things in the game. And understand just how scary it is as a map mod specifically. Next up, this one can brick a lot of builds. Less recovery rate of life and energy shield, particularly Eldritch Battery builds, as I mentioned earlier. Eldritch Battery builds really rely on your energy shield recharge, which is already hit a little bit by the Eldritch Battery modifier. This can 100% brick a build for EB builds, or if you are based entirely on life regen for like Righteous Fire, something like that. If you have a very strong less recovery rate of life or energy shield, that can break a lot of builds. Monsters deal extra fizz as chaos. This is new this league. Annoying, but if you have your capped chaos res, as you should, this shouldn't be as scary as this website's making it look. However, the withered effect, if it does stack in, if you take a lot of hits, this can stack up and be pretty scary. Hexproof, if your build relies on curses like my Fire Trap Elementalist to do its damage, this can brick some builds or just make you do way less damage. Do be aware of that if you're like a 2 or 3 curse based character. Possessed monsters, you know, ghosted bosses can be kind of scary. I think they're kind of fun and they do drop more loot. So I usually find this one actually as a benefit more than a downside. But early on when your build is weak, this can be a pain in the butt. And then last up, I think just reduced effective non-curse auras from skills. If your build relies on your auras, if you're purely an aura stacker, this can go up very, very high if you have increased effective map modifiers. So do be aware of this one. You know, if you rely on your auras for anything, this can be pretty scary. And then the rest of these, I'm not going to go over every single one. These ones are not really build bricking usually, and usually 1 or 2 of them on their own isn't that bad. But if you stack a bunch of them at once, it can be very scary. Like if you have monsters deal fizz as all 3 with shocked ground and you're not shock immune, and they have crit, all of these together could be a very, very scary map. And then on this side are ones that are generally regarded as beneficial. Beyond monsters is more quantity, more monsters to kill, more magic monsters, more rare monsters. Quantity also applying to rarity, higher rarity of items that drop, double bosses. Rogue Exiles are okay, but they're generally just not very good anymore. And the totems is sometimes a little bit additional monsters, but whatever. And then these ones are usually just like whatever, you're not really caring about them. However, honorable mention here for Sea Witches and their spawn. This will replace all of the monsters with just Sea Witches, which are very easy to kill, very safe monsters to fight. And they're usually very high pack size as well. So it can be great for blowing up entire screens of monsters. You've identified which map mods you care about, which ones you don't care about. I do also want to call out the Awakened PoE Trade functionality. I have it bound to Control M. I don't know if that is the default or not, but Control M in Awakened PoE Trade, this will bring up this nice little visual actually that you can actually left click and set different, warnings or whatever. So if something seems scary, you can mark that with a skull and crossbones. If it's like okay, but you don't like it, you can do a warning. And then if it's beneficial and you're going for it, you can mark it green. And then you can just kind of go down the line hitting Control M on each map and then see if it's good or not. And if they did have a way of hitting all of your maps in the tab, that might be interesting, but unfortunately it's only one at a time. I'm just calling honorable mention to this. It's kind of neat. It's attractive little interface, but unfortunately, since it limits you to 1 map at a time, I don't think it's that good. What I do want to call attention to is how you can bulk roll your maps. And this is really the point of the whole video. I wanted to go into as much detail as possible and really hit all of my bases here for beginners specifically, so they understood the theory. This is really the meat of the video and what I'm trying to get across here, and I think what's most important. So, bulk rolling your maps. Why do you do that? The main reason is that crafting a lot of stuff is a pain in the butt, right? Every single time that you use a chisel on a single map, then you elk a single map, and then maybe you chaos it to get rid of the bad mobs, or you scour and elk again based on prices. Chaos spam is actually the best at time of recording because scours actually sell for more than a chaos per right now. Doing that, running 1 map, and then going back to your stash tab, rolling another map after you run a map, maybe double checking your scarabs and doing all that. It really adds up a lot of time. It really segments and breaks up your flow. Just being able to run, 4 maps at a time, reapplying your sextants, 4 maps again, and then you go back and, you've got your whole system ready to go. That is just going to be so much more time efficient and honestly more fun to do. So you kind of just get the annoying stuff out of the way and then you can run your maps. I really think it's just the right way to do it. So I'm going to show you how I like to roll my maps. I'm sure there's more type A personalities that have everything in a spreadsheet done perfectly. If you do want to hyper optimize it, this is a good baseline to go from there. If you want to go full spreadsheet, Magic Find Andy type of player. First thing that I want to call honorable mention to here, and this will just help all Path of Exile players, is to use something like X mouse button control. It is legal according to the terms of service to be able to rebind your scroll wheel to a left click action as long as it's 1 scroll click per left click. Authorized by GGG, all of that, you don't have to worry about it. You can use something like X mouse right here. I am using my Razer software to do it. Logitech software can do it. You can even legally use auto hotkey as long as it's just doing a 1-to-1 rebind. So anything like that to just rebind your scroll wheel. This is how I am able to very quickly transfer items like this. I am using my scroll wheel to transfer as I am just kind of moving my mouse up and down the line. This is really the way that everyone should be playing the game. If you're not using X mouse and you're not rebinding your scroll wheel yet, save your wrist. It is the way to play PoE right now. Once you have that out of the way, that's how I'm going to be able to perform all of these actions very quickly. Highly, highly recommend it. Allows you to use your jewelers and fusings more quickly. All of that, strongly recommend. Anyway, first thing that you want to do when you have a bulk of maps is you want to take your Scroll of Wisdoms right here and then just do them all the way across the line. You can also just type unID right here, find the unidentified ones, click on them. Make sure that all your maps are identified. Next up is you want to type in normal. You want to make sure that all of your items are normal. You know, maybe some of your maps are already rolled. You can find those if you want to. I prefer to just bulk roll them. You can re-roll them. Even if you had something decent, it's okay. So from this, what I do is I want to use my scours on everything that's not normal and just make sure that they're all highlighted. Now this one is corrupted. In fact, a very nicely rolled, well-corrupted map. So this was great. This is an 8 mod map. 8 mod maps are special. This is only acquired through a corruption or through a sextant. These ones, as the name implies, can have up to 8 modifiers. So you can see that they become very strong, 104% quantity. This can get up to like 140 plus with a very perfectly rolled one. These are the most desired maps. We're going to go over the value of those in a little bit later. We already have a corrupted one. I'm going to take that out of the pool right here because this one's already done. There's nothing we can do with a corrupted map, except for one thing, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Now, after this, we want to be looking for 20% quality. I'm just going to type 20 in right here. You could do an advanced regex. I'm not going to teach regular expressions in this video. I thought about it, but poe.re is good enough. And the video is already going to be longer than I intended. So just type in 20 right here, and then we're going to use our chisels. We want to hold shift, and then we want to use our scroll wheel and just go down the line and turn all of these to 20% quality. And yes, this becomes kind of tedious. And this is why we use the scroll wheel. It is much faster, much better way to do it. All right, now all of these are 20% quantity. Now the next thing, we want to type in rare. And we just take our alchemy, use our scroll wheel again, and go up and down the line. Turn all of these things rare. All right, these are ready to identify these scary mods. Remember, there are mods that are scary that can brick our build, and this is where poe.re comes in. It has really nice things for Gwenin, Heist, Flasks, all that type of stuff. We are only going to be focusing on map modifiers right now. What this website is it generates a regular expression, which is something from the programming world, which is where I come from, that allows you to basically just do text matching. It is a very, very robust system that is partially implemented here. There's a lot of complexity because there's a baseline search language that's already built into the filter. We have to use quotes to kind of identify certain things, and not all regular expression tools are built in here, but there is a lot that we can leverage. Basically, just to show off a little bit that we can do here, for example, see the word increased monster damage. I can type INC and then .star. What .star means is identify any character any number of times. So dot is any character, star is any number of times. So identify, infinite number of characters and then damage. What this is saying highlight any line that has INC, any number of characters, and then the word damaged on the same line. And what we'll see is we have increased monster damage, but also increased boss damage here as well, because this is just increased space damage. And space is the same thing, any character, star number of times. Same thing here, any character, star number of times, space, monster, space. We do have to get clever sometimes if we want it to say not boss, if we want to be a little bit more explicit. So for example, if I don't want boss in here, the easiest thing is just, I can use quotes and I can say, increase .star mon .star dam. And we can make this even shorter, right? Inc .star mon .star dam. We can type in just partial words right here. And then this ensures that we have additional requirements on that filter to show up. That'll remove the number of things that are kind of showing up. It is a very rich language that a lot of programmers complain about all the time. It would be way out of scope of this video to teach anything more than that, but that kind of just shows you a little bit of the power right there. Oh, and just to show one other cool thing about it, we can do something along the lines of type the word quant and then .star \D 3 times. What this says is find a line that has the word quant in it and then a number that is at least 3 digits wide. So what this pretty explicitly is saying, because we know the conditions that can show up, is show me a map that has quant with at least 3 digits. It's at least 100% quant or higher. So this way we can identify the best well-rolled maps that we have already in our, in our map tab right here. So that's another really cool thing that you can do here. And just to show how complex this gets, we can also go \D with brackets on the 3 inside of parentheses, and this is an alternative way of saying \D 3 times. There's a lot of weird ways that you can do stuff in regular expressions, but if this has you interested, you can go find a regular expression teacher. That's as far as I'm gonna go in this video. Luckily, you don't gotta know none of that. we could just go here. This website solves so much of this for you. We can type in a lot of this stuff and just kind of deal with it. So if we want to identify the scary mobs for our build. So I am a deck stacking ice shot character. I am technically kind of reflect immune here with Awakened Elemental Jammers with attacks, but I don't have it in my Mana Forge setup. And I still actually have a little fizz damage because I'm not full fizz to cold conversion because I'm just deck stacking. Annoyingly, because of that, I both can't run elemental or fizz damage reflection. I can run, cannot regen maps. I don't like doing it, but I can run it. However, I cannot run, cannot leech. I need to mana leech to sustain my build. So I want to turn that off. And then because I just don't like temp chains, I like to turn that off as well. And like I said earlier, minus max player res is probably just one of the scariest things in the game. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm not going to explicitly look for anything, so I'm not going to turn anything that we're highlighting. We just want to look for the stuff that bricks our build. And then this is the regular expression up here that it generated. We can just click copy right here. It'll turn green, and then we can paste it into this modifier right here. So what this does is it darkens the maps that we don't want to run. So all of the highlighted maps are already safe. What I prefer to do is just use Chaos Orbs. As I said earlier, at time of recording, Scours are actually worth more than a Chaos Orb. So we can just shift click, right click on a Chaos Orb, and then we want to click on the dark maps. As you can see, this one has Cannot Leech, this one has Reflect, this one has minus max player res. It's making the maps that we don't want to run dark. So we just want to shift click on Chaos Orbs on the ones that we don't like. I recommend not spamming a single map, but just going down the line until you hit them all. And then there we go. All of the maps that we now have highlighted are good to run. In addition to that, we can go for quantity of at least, let's say 70%. However, the issue here is that there is a max number of characters in the PoE client. Kind of sucks. So you can't do the whole thing as a single search. I like to split this into two different things if you are trying to optimize for quantity or pack size. So now once we have all of the modifiers taken care of, then we can uncheck all of these, and then we're just going to be looking for quant and or pack size. Then we can copy this one, put it down here, and then we can look for the ones that have quant that aren't big enough. So obviously the problem is you need two different regular expressions. Can't put them all on the same line, but that's just a client restriction. There's really nothing we can do to get around that. Then the next thing that I recommend for your final planning step is to organize your maps in logical segments for how they're going to be run. If you're using specific sextants, usually in sets of 4 at a time, something like this. So you run your 4 maps, and then you always go back to this tab. You know what you're going to grab. So you can just take one inventory at a time, or you could take multiple if you want to. Depending on how much loot you're going to take out of your maps, sometimes you're not taking very much. You're just going for divines or something like that. You could take multiple sets at a time. But this way, you know exactly what you have. You have your 4 maps that you run. You put your scarabs in, and then you use your compass and set up your sextants exactly how you want. When these 4 maps at the first row are gone, then you know you're done, and you can go back to your tab and then re-up and grab your next set. So by pre-rolling all your maps, pre-setting up your scarabs and your sextants, you know you're just doing one chunk at a time. And then obviously build on top of the system if you have multiple scarabs or fragments or anything like that. Additional honorable mention right here is I do want to call out Vol Orbs. As we saw with the 8 mod map, this is one of the outcomes that can happen from using a Vol Orb. Now, you can also just end up making your map brick it for you. You know, be careful about that. It'll re-roll the map. It could even turn it into a different map. So this is for folks that have an optimized strategy that are willing to risk some maps. But by using a Vol Orb on a map, it can make it go unidentified, which actually gives you additional quality that some people don't know about. There's a hidden modifier for unidentified maps. When that goes unidentified, it keeps the same mod. So if it was a safe map before, it is still safe. So you're good to go there. It can become an 8 mod map. However, you can see that you can hit absolutely crazy quantity, rarity, and pack size with an outcome that hits the 8 map mods. It also adds additional modifiers on it that we could hit really scary ones. If I couldn't run Cannot Regen, or if it got Reflect or anything like that, that could be very scary. There are usually contingency factors like using flasks or anything like that. So you don't really have to worry about it, but it can be scary. However, particularly if you're an SSF and it's early in the league and you just have a very low map sustain, a thing that you can do is sack a corrupted map and create a new one of the same tier and rarity. So we can spend 200 wild crystallized life force. For example, if this had Reflect on it or something like that and I needed to reroll, we can craft this right here. It will hit, I believe, only the maps that are natural tier. We can just check that really quickly. Yeah, I think it's only natural tier maps. It will re-roll them. It's kind of like a Horizon Orb that also re-rolls the modifiers. If you want to save a map, you can also do this as well. However, if it does go unidentified corrupted, you have no idea what it is, and there's no way you can save it anymore. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. All right, that was a lot of talking. I went into way more detail than I was planning, but I wanted to make this as comprehensive as possible. There's way more prep. There's way more stuff that you can do to ensure more quantity. You can prep incubators. You can, make sure that you have rampage and whatever, just to make your map running a little bit faster and smoother and all that. But I really wanted to have something here that can establish a foundation to help players that are maybe only running 10 maps an hour or even 5 maps an hour, showing how the veterans of the game may set up their systems, really play the game a bit more efficiently, get more loot per hour spent so you can have more fun playing the game, and most importantly, spend as much time killing monsters as possible instead of fiddling around in their inventory. Huge thank you to the patrons that requested this video. Hopefully it helps many, many people. And I'm going to go get ready for the stream. I'll see y'all soon. Goodbye.